He chose another woman and struck his mate, until a rival alpha claimed her instead. The pack hall smelled like cedar smoke and betrayal. Elena stood at the edge of the gathering, watching Marcus, her mate, her bonded mate, the man whose scent she'd carried under her skin since the moon marked them, press his mouth to another woman's temple like it was nothing. Like 3 years of her devotion was a coat he'd outgrown. Nobody moved to stop it. Alpha's privilege, they called it. She called it something else in her head, something with teeth. "Get out," Marcus said, when he finally noticed her staring. Not loud, worse than loud. Bored. She didn't leave. She should have left. His hand came up before she'd even finished the thought, a crack across her cheekbone that sent her into the support beam. The whole hall went silent the way a held breath goes silent. Even his new woman flinched. Elena touched her jaw, didn't cry, filed it away next to every other thing she'd swallowed for him. Cade Voss had driven 4 hours for a trade negotiation between packs, nothing more. He wasn't looking for a mate. He definitely wasn't looking for someone else's. But he smelled her before he saw her. Blood. And underneath it, something clean and furious trying not to break. He found her out behind the hall, sitting on an overturned crate, holding her own face together, with one hand like she could will the swelling down. "That's going to bruise," he said. Astute. She didn't look up. "You here to gloat too?" "I'm here because I heard a sound in there I didn't like." He crouched to her eye level, didn't touch her, "and I'm about to hear one I like a lot less, because I'm going to have a conversation with your alpha. He's not—" She stopped, rubbed the word out of her mouth. "He's not going to answer to some outsider. He doesn't have to answer to me." Cade's voice went low, the register that made lesser wolves check their footing. "He has to answer to the council when I file for a mate claim contest, which I'm about to do." Elena laughed, short, disbelieving, half a sob riding underneath it. "You don't even know me." "I know a bonded mark that's gone gray at the edges." He nodded at her wrist, at the faded claim band tattoo that should have been vivid black, glowing with the health of the bond. Instead, it looked like something left out in the rain. "That doesn't happen from a good bond, Elena. That happens when the wolf holding the other end stopped trying months ago." She hadn't told him her name. The contest was old law, older than most packs bothered to remember. A mate claim could be challenged if the bonded alpha demonstrably failed his mate. Abandonment, cruelty, breaking the vow of protection. Marcus laughed when the council invoked it. Laughed harder when Cade shifted in the circle, all silver black fur and quiet, terrible patience, and Marcus's own wolf, thinner these days, distracted, spent on someone who wasn't his mate, hit the ground in under 4 minutes. The bond doesn't transfer just because a fight ends. Everyone in the pack knew that. But the right to try does. Cade shifted back first. Didn't gloat either. Just walked to where Elena stood at the circle's edge, arms wrapped around herself, and said the only thing that mattered. "You don't have to say yes. But nobody in this circle is going to make you say it again for someone who hits you and calls it love." She didn't say yes that night. She said it 3 weeks later, on a porch 2 packs away, when Cade set down 2 mugs of coffee and didn't ask her a single question about Marcus, didn't perform sympathy, just sat beside her and let the quiet be enough. Her wrist healed dark and steady within the month. Marcus stayed married to his choice, and his choice, eventually, learned exactly what Elena already knew. Some wolves confuse a mate for a possession. It takes a different kind of alpha to understand the difference, and Elena, finally, had found one who did. ISCO, expand K-row without heading, 1,000 words, my in simple English words, write full story in simple document. It should be interesting, and this story should be engaging, so the audience doesn't get bored. Also keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI generated. Also don't create violated content which can affect YouTube policy. Also don't use names like Marcus, Sarah, Emma, Jamal, etc. Architected 10,000-word werewolf romance narrative with accessible language and policy-compliant content. Architected 10,000-word werewolf romance narrative with accessible language and policy-compliant content. Elena had been part of the Redwood Pack since she was born, and everyone there knew her as the quiet girl who worked hard and never asked for much. When she turned 21, the moon gave her a mate. That was how the wolves described it. One night, at a small gathering near the old stone circle, she caught the scent of a boy named Victor, and something in her chest clicked into place, like a key turning in a lock. Victor felt it too. He walked straight to her, took her hand without asking, and said, "There you are." Everyone around them smiled. It felt like the beginning of a good story. For the first year, it was. Victor was warm and easy to laugh with. He used to bring her small things from his hunting trips, a smooth stone, a bundle of wildflowers, a joke he had practiced the whole way home just to see her smile. Elena's friends told her she was lucky. Her mother cried happy tears at the bonding ceremony. Even the pack elders, who rarely said kind things about anyone, admitted that Victor treated her well. But packs are strange places. Power moves through them like weather, and Victor's family had always wanted him to lead. When the old alpha stepped down 2 years into their bond, Victor took his place. That was when things began to shift, slowly at first, the way a floor tilts so gently you don't notice until the cup rolls off the table. Being alpha meant meetings, decisions, respect from others, and attention. A lot of attention. Victor liked being looked at. He liked being agreed with. Elena watched him change in small ways. He stopped asking about her day and started talking only about his own. He stopped noticing when she was tired. He started noticing other people instead. One of those people was a woman named Nadia, who had moved to the pack from the coast. Nadia was clever and confident, and she made Victor feel important in a way that flattered him more than love ever had. At first, Elena told herself she was imagining things. She told herself that a mate bond was unbreakable, that whatever this was, it would pass, like a fever. It did not pass. By the 3rd year, Victor barely bothered to hide it. He would disappear for evenings at a time, come home smelling like someone else's perfume, and act as if Elena had no right to ask where he had been. When she did ask, his answers grew short. Then his patience grew short. Then, one evening in the middle of a pack gathering, in front of nearly everyone she had grown up with, he pulled Nadia close and kissed her hair the way he used to kiss Elena's. The room went quiet, the way a held breath goes quiet. Elena did not shout. She did not cry, not right away. She simply stood there, feeling something inside her crack, not loudly, just a small, permanent kind of breaking, like a hairline fracture in glass that you don't see until the light hits it right. "Get out," Victor said to her, not even bothering to lower his voice. "You're embarrassing yourself." She should have turned around and walked away right then. Later, she would wish she had. But 3 years of loving someone does not disappear just because they stop deserving it, and some old, stubborn part of her still wanted him to look at her the way he used to. "Victor," she said quietly, "please, not like this." He turned toward her, and for a second, she saw something cold behind his eyes, something she had never let herself notice before. Then his hand came up, fast, and the side of her face exploded into white noise. She stumbled into the wooden post behind her and caught herself before she fell. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. Even Nadia, standing right beside him, looked away. Elena pressed her palm to her cheek. It was already starting to swell. She did not cry. Not there. Not in front of all of them. She simply nodded, once, like she had just learned something important, turned around, and walked out into the cold night air. Behind her, the gathering slowly started talking again, the way people do when they want to pretend nothing happened. She sat alone behind the old meeting hall for a long time, staring at nothing, holding her own face together with one hand. The night was cold enough that her breath showed in front of her, small clouds disappearing into the dark. She did not know how long she sat there before she heard footsteps. They were careful footsteps, steady, not the kind that belonged to anyone from her pack. A tall man walked around the side of the building and stopped when he saw her. He was a stranger, someone she had never met, dressed in traveling clothes that marked him as an outsider, a visitor from another pack, here for some kind of business meeting between alphas. He had broad shoulders, dark hair pushed back from his face, and eyes that studied her carefully, the way someone studies a puzzle they intend to solve. "That's going to leave a mark," he said, nodding toward her cheek. "Thank you for noticing," she said. Her voice came out flatter than she meant it to. "Did you come out here to enjoy the show too?" "I came out here because I heard something in there I didn't like the sound of." He crouched down so they were closer to eye level, though he was careful to keep some distance between them. "And I'm about to go hear something I'm going to like even less. Whatever it is, it's not your business." "Maybe not." He looked at her wrist, where a faded mark sat under her sleeve. The bonding mark that should have glowed strong and dark if the bond between two mates was healthy. Instead, hers looked pale, almost gray, like ink left out too long in the sun. But that mark tells a story all on its own, and it's not a happy one. Elena pulled her sleeve down over it, embarrassed, though she wasn't sure why she should feel embarrassed about something that had been done to her. "You don't know anything about me," she said. "I know enough," he answered. "I know a bonding mark like that doesn't fade because someone loves you too much. It fades because someone stopped trying a long time ago." She didn't have an answer for that, so she said nothing. "My name is Cade," he said after a moment. "I lead the Ashford Pack, 2 territories east of here. I came for a trade meeting. I did not come looking for trouble." He paused. "But it seems trouble found me anyway." Elena almost laughed, despite everything. "I'm sorry you had to see that. Don't apologize for something someone else did to you," Cade said, and something about the way he said it, simple and certain, made her chest tighten in a way she didn't understand yet. He helped her stand, careful not to touch her swollen cheek, and walked her partway back toward the guest quarters, where the visiting pack members were staying, since it was closer than her own home. Neither of them said much else that night. But something had shifted, quietly, the way weather changes before you feel the first drop of rain. The next morning, pack business resumed as if nothing unusual had happened the night before. Victor sat at the head of the long meeting table, greeting the visiting Alpha and his advisors as though he had not, 12 hours earlier, struck the woman he was bonded to in front of half his pack. Elena sat near the back of the hall, her cheek covered with a light layer of makeup that did little to hide the bruise underneath, and tried to focus on the reports being read aloud about hunting grounds and trade routes. She noticed Cade watching her from across the room more than once. Not staring, not making a scene, just watching, the way someone keeps an eye on something they are worried might break. The meeting was almost finished when Cade stood up. "Before we close," he said, his voice calm, but carrying easily through the hall, "I would like to raise something under the old pack laws, something concerning the treatment of a bonded mate." The room went still. Victor's easy smile faltered for the first time all morning. "I'm not sure what you mean." "I think you know exactly what I mean," Cade said. "Under the ancient code, still recognized by every council from here to the Northern Territories, a mate claim can be challenged if the bonded alpha has clearly failed in his duty to protect and honor his mate. Cruelty, abandonment, public harm." He let the words sit there for a moment. "I witnessed one of those things myself last night." A murmur ran through the hall like wind through tall grass. Victor's face went through several colors before settling on something between anger and forced calm. "This is not your pack, not your business." "It became my business," Cade said, "the moment I watched you strike a woman who trusted you to keep her safe." Elena sat frozen in her seat, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She wanted to disappear into the floor. She also, somewhere deep down in a part of herself she had almost forgotten existed, felt something that had not stirred in a very long time: hope. The pack elders exchanged uneasy looks. Old laws like the one Cade mentioned were rarely used anymore, mostly because most alphas behaved well enough that no one needed them. But the law was still real, still binding, and everyone in that hall knew it. "This is absurd," Victor said, standing now, his voice rising. "She is my mate. This is not a matter for outsiders." "Then let the council decide," Cade said simply. "If I am wrong, nothing changes. If I am right, then the law protects her the way it was always meant to." The head elder, An old, gray-haired woman named Rosalind, who had overseen 3 generations of pact decisions, finally spoke. The challenge has been raised properly, under witness, in open meeting. It cannot be dismissed without a hearing. She looked at Victor with an expression that held no warmth at all. You will answer for what happened last night. Victor's jaw tightened, but there was nothing he could say. Too many people had seen it. Too many people already knew. The hearing was held 3 days later. Elena had never imagined she would have to stand in front of the entire pack and describe, out loud, everything that had happened, not just the single moment when Victor's hand had struck her face, but the slow unraveling that came before it. The late nights he didn't explain, the way he stopped looking at her like she mattered, the way he made her feel invisible in her own home, long before he ever raised a hand. She spoke quietly but clearly. She did not cry, though her voice shook more than once. When she finished, the hall was silent, and this time the silence felt different. Not the awkward silence of people pretending not to notice a problem. A heavier silence, the silence of people finally facing one they had ignored too long. Nadia was asked to speak as well, and to her credit, she did not lie. She admitted what had happened between her and Victor, admitted she had seen the way he treated Elena, and had chosen to look away because it was easier than caring. It was not much of an apology, but it was honest, and honesty was more than Elena had expected to get that day. Victor tried to defend himself. He said Elena exaggerated things. He said every couple had hard moments. He said the old laws were outdated and should not apply to modern pack life. But the elders had heard enough. Under the ancient code, when an alpha was found to have broken his vow of protection toward his mate, the bond could be formally challenged through combat, not to punish for its own sake, but to prove that whoever claimed the right to protect Elena going forward was actually capable of doing so, and worthy of the responsibility. Victor, still confident in his own strength, agreed almost eagerly, certain he would win, and put the matter to rest for good. Cade agreed too, though for very different reasons. The morning of the challenge was cold and clear. The whole pack gathered in a wide circle at the edge of the training grounds, the kind of morning where breath turned to fog, and nobody spoke above a whisper. Elena stood near the front, wrapped in a thick coat, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, not because of the cold, but because she didn't know where else to put her hands. She had asked Cade, quietly, the night before, if he was doing this because he actually cared what happened to her, or simply because he believed in the old laws. He had looked at her for a long moment before answering. Both, he said, but mostly the first one. She hadn't known what to say to that, so she hadn't said anything at all, but she had thought about it long after he left. The challenge itself did not take long. Wolves fight differently than people imagine. It is less about size and more about focus, patience, and control. Victor was strong and confident and used to winning arguments through intimidation rather than skill. Cade was none of those things. He was calm. He was careful. He fought like someone who had trained his whole life not to prove a point, but to actually protect something. Within a few minutes, it was clear who the better fighter was. Victor's temper, the same temper that had cost him so much already, made him careless. Cade did not need to be cruel to win. He simply outlasted him, wore him down, and eventually pinned him to the frozen ground until Victor, breathing hard and furious, finally stopped fighting. The elders declared the challenge complete. Under the old code, this did not mean Elena's bond with Victor instantly transferred to Cade. Bonds were not prizes to be handed from one man to another, but it did mean that Victor's claim over her, the legal and social hold he had used to keep her tied to him even after everything he had done, was formally broken. She was free, for the first time in years, to choose for herself. Cade shifted back to his human form, breathing hard, a few new bruises forming along his ribs, and walked straight to where Elena stood at the edge of the circle. He did not smile like someone who had just won something. He looked, if anything, a little unsure of himself, which surprised her more than anything else that morning. "You don't owe me anything," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "This wasn't about me proving I deserve you. Nobody deserves another person like they're a prize. I just wanted you to have the choice that should have always been yours." Elena looked at him for a long moment, feeling something in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. Not excitement exactly, not yet, but something quieter. Relief, maybe. Or the first small stretch of a door opening after being shut for a very long time. "I need time," she said honestly. "I don't know who I am outside of all this yet." "Take all the time you need," Cade said. "I'm not going anywhere." And then he left, along with his advisors, back toward his own territory, without asking her for anything in return. The weeks that followed were strange for Elena. Being free of Victor's household felt like learning to walk again after an injury. Every step was slower than she wanted, and she kept expecting to stumble. She moved into her mother's home for a while, slept more than she had in years, and spent long afternoons simply sitting outside, listening to the wind, remembering what silence without fear felt like. Slowly, the pack around her began to change too. Word of the challenge spread to neighboring territories, and other packs began quietly discussing whether their own old laws about mate treatment needed to be enforced more seriously, rather than left to gather dust. Nadia eventually left the pack altogether, unable to stay in a place that now saw her so differently than it once had. Victor kept his title as Alpha, technically, though his standing among the elders and hunters never fully recovered. People still respected the position. Fewer of them respected him. Elena did not think about him much anymore, which surprised her. She had expected heartbreak to last longer. About 2 months later, a letter arrived at her mother's house, carried by one of the Ashford pack's younger runners. It was simple, written in plain handwriting that looked like it had been rewritten more than once before being sent. "I'm not writing to ask you for anything," it read. "I just wanted you to know the offer still stands, whenever or if ever you're ready. No pressure, no timeline, just an open door, Cade." She read it 3 times before folding it carefully and setting it on her nightstand. It took her another month to write back. When she finally did visit the Ashford territory, it was not some dramatic reunion. Cade met her at the edge of his land, alone, without any of his advisors or pack members watching. He looked nervous in a way she hadn't expected from someone so calm during a fight. "You came," he said. "I did," she answered. "I'm still not sure what I'm doing here." "That's all right," Cade said. "We don't have to know yet." They spent the afternoon walking through his territory, talking about small, unimportant things. The weather, the different plants that grew near his land, an old dog that followed them the whole way and refused to leave Elena's side. It was easy in a way she had forgotten conversations could be easy. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody made her feel like she had to earn the right to speak. Over the following months, she visited more often. Slowly, carefully, something new began to grow between them, built not on some instant, overwhelming moon-given spark, but on patience, respect, and the simple, steady choice to keep showing up for each other. When they eventually did form a bond of their own, it was nothing like the fast, intense connection she had once felt with Victor. It was quieter, steadier, the kind of bond built one honest day at a time, rather than one built on a single dramatic night at a stone circle. Elena often thought back to that cold evening behind the meeting hall, sitting alone with her bruised cheek, certain that her life had just ended in some way. It had not ended. It had simply cracked open enough to let something better find its way in. Years later, when younger wolves in the pack asked her about that time, she never made herself sound like some helpless victim, nor did she make Cade sound like some perfect hero who saved her single-handedly. She told them the truth, plainly. She said that some people mistake love for ownership and mistake control for care, and it takes a long time sometimes to see the difference clearly. She said that leaving is rarely as simple as people imagine, and that it is all right if it takes time, and mistakes, and outside help, before someone finally finds the strength or the support to walk away from something that is hurting them. And she said that real strength is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like someone quietly speaking up in a room full of silence. Sometimes it looks like waiting patiently for someone else to be ready, instead of demanding they be ready on your schedule. Sometimes it simply looks like choosing, every day, to treat the people you love with the same care you would want for yourself. Elena never forgot the bruise on her cheek, or the silence in that hall, or the small, cold moment when everything in her life changed direction. But she also never let that moment define the rest of her story. She built something new instead, slowly, honestly, one steady day at a time, with someone who understood that real love was never something you take from someone else. It was something you choose to give, again and again, without ever needing to prove you deserved it in the first place.